101. My name is Eliza. I am from the castle Newcomer. My mother matrix has not requested a transfer. Whispers of disgust permeated the room. Those who had ignored Bertha's command to sit down did now so at the promise of watching a scandal take place. Eliza continued over the buzzing. My mother matrix's staff hails from Gladia the First, she proudly announced. The room became silent with the reverence of the High Council member. Eliza went on without further interruptions. I was brought up with the knowledge that few of you have had the privilege to learn. Your crimes, she said, looking at Matrix Bertha, have been common gossip. But what isn't remembered is the truth that you have bestowed upon our culture with your sincere desire to rectify your damages. Since this is the first class that you have ever taught, I have been given permission from the High Council of Zantok to speak before the class. Bertha bowed her head, nodding acknowledgment to Eliza's role in the High Council's plans. The death penalty was rescinded in your case in order to prove the wisdom of the High Council and to show that our society is a given one. Because your crimes were committed during a time of major strife and upheaval in your life, the Zantok Council understood your lack of control and showed compassion to one of the grieving daughters. This understanding not only justifies the supremacy of the way, but also reinforces its divinity. It is because of you, Matrix Bertha, and the ultimate intelligence of the High Council that I accepted an offer to become a priestess. A diamond is revered, not for its birth to brilliance, but because its triumph over inception. After concluding her prepared argument with the first riddle of infancy, she sat down. The rest of the class bowed their heads, ashamed they had to be reminded of an elementary school law. When it was Bertha's turn to give her speech, the class remained silent, granting the respect that the elder deserved. The words that I am about to say have been written for me by the High Council of Zantok. A copy has been programmed into your pin boards for you to bring to your guardian matrix for final orders. My crimes occurred when I was 13. My mother matrix and siblings had just died in a sliver crash, along with 3 of my closest friends and their guardians. In that sliver also were many of my mother matrix's friends, socialites, queens, and staff from the Castle Winterport. The sliver was on its way to the wages at Newcomer. The only reason why I was not on the flight is because I was ill and considered dangerous to the charges that would be at the wages. After their deaths, I was transferred to the notorious Castle of Droid. I was full of guilt, despair, and loneliness. During my stay there, I became defiant and fled to the Commons. There, I was influenced by the outcasts of the Commons, people that were even shunned by their own commoner society. I defiled myself with alcohol, drugs, thieving, and perverted sex. During the robbing of a socialite who had been attacked and brought into the Commons, I was arrested. With the discovery of my identity came the High Council's attention and pity. It offered me another chance. Bertha bowed her head in prayer and then continued. Blessed was the day that I was brought to Zantok for rehabilitation therapy and reindoctrination to the way. It was at Zantok that I lived and learned for 30 years and earned the position of restructure teacher. The High Council of Zantok in its glorious perfection has forgiven me of my past. I pray for your indulgence in this my last act as your teacher to stand with me and recite the Most Holy Creed. All the girls rose and stood by their desks to chant with Bertha. Blessed be the cleansing which brought the inception of the High Council of Zantok. It was at the first convention they received the revelation of restructure in the way. Blessed be the way. Peace be with you, Bertha said to the class. As we are all one, came the class's response. Brought from the one, Bertha continued, of the Holy Mother Matrix, the class said. Tears filled Teresa's eyes as her memory faded. The news of her teacher's death had been made in melancholy all day. This was the first time that she allowed herself the luxury of remorse. She rose from her desk to retrieve her own school pinboard to recall her own restructure test. She hooked the old pinboard, adjusted by Bertha, into her computer and used it as a guide for grading and adjusting our students' exams. The driver of the solar zine opened the door and out stepped Queen Lenise. She was ushered up the steps of the craft and showed to her seat. Strapped in for ascent, she called the serving matrix for a cup of valerian tea. Strato travel always bothered Lenise. She used it solely for emergencies, unlike other queens who enjoyed it for the convenience and prestige. Being the highest queen, Lenise owned her own sliver. Lower queens and socialites of Nician shared common slivers. Slivers do exactly as the name implies. They slice through the stratosphere, slivering through the barrier before coasting to their destination. Solar copters and solar ports were used for shorter distances, along with solar zines. For vacations, Lenise opted for the solar copters. Though slow, they allowed her to see the land and sea below. After her daughter Martelle was weaned from her, she'd taken a week off, traveling the coast off Zenith, which was once the United States, from Zantok, which was once Maine, to the wetlands, which was once Florida. During the centuries since her structure, a spring cleaning of the continent, most of Zenith had returned to a fairly natural state, speckled with windmills and solar stations. Most of the west coast had finally succumbed to the sea during the tidal waves of 2010. The land ties to South America were also destroyed, reshaping the continents before the ocean's appetite was finally quenched. The thought of visiting Zantok was churning Lenise's stomach. The serving matrix sensed her discomfort as she served the tea, offering Lenise a synthetic to calm her nerves. Lenise declined the sedative, but told her to keep the valerian tea coming. It was imperative for Lenise to gain control over her thoughts. She systematically analyzed every detail of her impending meeting, carefully banking safe answers to the questions that she believed they would ask. As long as she kept the interviewers to the listed questions, she'd be fine. Any deviation from the list would occur because of raised suspicions from her answers. She congratulated herself for replacing the slip of paper that had fallen from the shore without reading it, for knowledge of its contents would only add to the secrets that she needed to keep. The betrayal of his existence was enough.